Hi there, and welcome to the Circling the Bases podcast. My name is DJ Short, and I'm joined here, as always, by Drew Silva. This is our latest position preview episode during our series. We covered first base and second base in our previous episodes, so you can go back in our archives to check those out. But today we are moving on to shortstop. Before we get into that, just a quick reminder that the NBC Sports EDGE Fantasy Baseball magazine is in stores now. The online guide is also available now and has everything you need to get ready for your drafts. And it'll be constantly updated throughout spring training to get you all prepared for your drafts. We just posted a dynasty mock draft analysis the other day, but tons more good stuff on the way over the next month and a half. So regardless of what format you play, you should find some real actionable advice there going into your drafts. You can go to NBCSportsEdge.com/MLB draft guide to get started there. All right, Drew. So shortstop. We're recording this Thursday, March 18th.
February 18th.
Oh, that's right. We are recording this on Thursday, February 18th. I just want to skip ahead to the start of the season is what I think is going on. But the hope is that these episodes can be relevant throughout spring training as you get ready for your drafts. And, you know, with shortstops, Drew, it's arguably the deepest position out there, at least as far as the potential of having either an elite player or a very good player as your starting option.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I'll read off my top 15 or top 12 here in a second. But, yeah, I mean, at the top, and even within that top 12, you have some of the most exciting players in the game, dynamic talents, full category coverage in fantasy with some of these guys. I need like a strobe light behind me or something. We're posting the full videos of these podcasts on the NBC Sports YouTube page, by the way. So check that out. Or if you follow us on Twitter, we'll be posting links there. But yeah, this position has become a premium place to find fantasy production over the last half decade or even the last like full decade or so.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And meanwhile, in the past, first base was maybe like the elite position for power. But shortstop is just such a dynamic position. And we're going to see so many of these guys go off the board. You know, I'd say you're going to be 10 deep, maybe 50, 60 picks into the draft.
Yep, totally. I'll start by reading my top 12, I guess.
Go for it.
All right. Number 1, Fernando Tatis Jr. Number 2, Trey Turner. Number 3, Trevor Story. 4, Francisco Lindor. 5, Adalberto Mondesi. 6, Bo Bichette. 7, Corey Seager. 8, Xander Bogaerts. 9, Tim Anderson. 10, Gleyber Torres. 11, Javier Baez. And 12, Carlos Correa.
Okay. We kind of disagree around the middle part, but, we do start off very much on the same path. And, of course, a very rich man, Fernando Tatis Jr. at the top, that $300 million plus extension with the Padres over 14 years, right?
Yeah, 14 years, man.
Yeah.
Makes you feel real old.
Yeah. To say the least.
How old will you be when that contract expires? In your 50s?
It starts with a 5. Yeah.
Well, you look younger than me, so you got that.
That's good. I'll take it. I don't know what I'll be then. My hair will certainly be gray. So Tatis at the top here, and what can you really say? I mean, he was a beast. I mean, he's been a beast since coming to the majors, but I think last year really proved it. I think there were maybe some doubters in his rookie season. He had a 4.10 BABIP in 2019. His strikeout rate was basically 30%, but he really improved his contact rate last year, 67.3% all the way up to 72.7%. Saw his strikeout rate fall to 23.7%. The BABIP kind of normalized 306, right around the league average. Then the 17 homers and 11 steals kind of slowed down a bit toward the end, but all around, I think you got to feel really safe that the plate discipline's getting better. He was elite across the board as far as batted ball metrics, average exit velocity, hard hit percentage, barrel percentage. So what can you really say? And the speed's off the charts too.
Yeah, I mean, there's a case to be made for drafting Tatis at number 1 overall.
Yeah.
in a standard league. You're mostly going to see Ronald Acuna in that spot this year, and then it's usually Tatis or Mookie Betts at number 2, depending on where you look. But yeah, Tatis has played 143 major league games, so close to a full season, and he has a 301 batting average, 956 OPS, 39 homers, 27 steals. The RBIs and the runs scored that go with that kind of production, just absolutely incredible from a guy that is this young and who makes highlight reel plays every other day on defense as well. If there's a worry here, it's that we haven't seen him go the distance yet for like a normal 162 game season because of the injuries in his rookie year and the shortened schedule last year, obviously. So we'll see how his body holds up to that. We'll see how he responds to an extended slump. Like you mentioned, there was kind of one towards the end of last year, and slumps happen to the best of them. It's kind of how you make adjustments and rebound. So there are some unknowns still, but you could nitpick even the most proven players in that fashion if you wanted to, especially when it comes to injury risk. I'm pretty confident that Tatis is the star that he appears to be. Just turned 22 years old in January, just signed that big $340 million extension, the longest contract in baseball history. And he's the new face of the sport and maybe like a crossover star. You know, he's got Gatorade commercials. You don't really see Mike Trout with his own standalone Gatorade commercials.
Yeah, and cover MLB The Show. I mean, he's everywhere, and you know he deserves to be. And I really hope MLB, you know, pushes it. And he also seems like he's willing to be part of those advertising campaigns. And you know, I think MLB might have wanted Mike Trout to be more, you know, open to that kind of stuff, but that's not really his personality. But Tatis is someone who seems, you know, all about the spotlight, and that's a great thing for the sport, especially as, you know, they try to stand out when you see all the personalities in the NBA and the NFL. So I think it's huge.
Yeah. So Trey Turner too. Did you have that as well?
Yes.
Yeah. So a monster last year during the shortened season, led all major leaguers in hits, 335 average, 982 OPS, 12 homers, 12 steals in 59 games. That's a 33 homer, 33 stolen base pace when you stretch it out to 162 games. Also had 41 RBIs and 46 runs scored, despite a pretty underwhelming supporting cast there in Washington last year, outside of Juan Soto, of course. So now you add Kyle Schwarber and Josh Bell to the mix, and it just looks a whole lot better in general for his runs scored and counting stats. He's only played a full season once in his career so far at age 27. But if he can stay healthy, the upside is comparable to Tatis, and he's probably even better in the speed department. ADP right now on Yahoo is 9th overall, going 8th overall in NFC drafts. If you wanted to take him earlier, I really wouldn't argue with that.
What was weird about Turner last year, only had 16 stolen base attempts, finished the year with 12 steals over 59 games. That's kind of disappointing. But it's not like he slowed down at all. He was in the 99th percentile in speed. So I think the speed will bounce back. But yeah, I mean, he's more than just a burner on the base paths. I think that's maybe how people kind of looked at him. And certainly, you know, that gives you a rather safe floor. Like, he'll be among the league leaders in steals if he stays healthy. But, you know, lowered his strikeout rate last year from 19.7% to 13.9%. Granted, it's a small sample, but you like to see that kind of stuff. Average exit velocity has been very healthy over the past 2 seasons. His barrel rate was up last year. And like you said, you know, a much better lineup, hopefully, this year for the Nationals with Josh Bell and Kyle Schwarber there. So, I totally buy into the idea of him as a, you know, mid to late first rounder. And I think he could return like top 3 value potentially.
Yeah. So I had Trevor Story at number 3 at the shortstop position. I mean, the lead talking point with him has to be that, you know, he's scheduled to become a free agent next winter, and the Rockies don't seem willing or, I guess, able to hand him a long-term contract. So it's likely that he doesn't play the entire season in Colorado with that Coors Field effect. But, man, his per 162 game production over the last 3 years is unreal. 38 home runs, 30 steals, 100 RBIs, and 108 runs scored. Again, that's what he's done for every 162 games played since the beginning of 2018. It's not even like a pace projection. It's what he's done. Also a 292 batting average, 909 OPS during that span. But, his home road splits are even more drastic than Nolan Arenado's. A 304 batting average, 994 OPS at Coors Field, a 250 batting average, a 760 OPS everywhere else. That's a little bit concerning. Like maybe, he goes somewhere where he's not going to be able to unlock that kind of power. But I think if he goes somewhere, it'll be to a contending team. And the Rockies lineup right now is as bad as it's ever been, like since I think they came into the league. I think there's a legitimate case to make for that. So he doesn't have a great supporting cast there. So maybe it would generally be good for him to go somewhere else.
And, if he gets more time to adjust to playing away from Coors Field, I think, it won't be as bad as those road splits appear.
Yeah.
But certainly it would be a negative to see him get traded away from Coors Field. I think the thing that maybe you hang your hat on with Trevor Story is that his plate discipline has really held steady over the past 3 seasons. If you remember when he came into the league, he was hitting a ton of home runs, but he was also striking out a ton. And he's gotten a lot better in that area. He's generally been like a high BABIP guy in his career too. So I think that'll help, keep the average pretty safe, even if he is traded. But, if you get a half a season of Trevor Story at Coors Field, that's still pretty good. And will probably be enough to justify this ADP, which is basically, late first round.
Yeah, I mean, he's got the speed that he should have a high batting average on balls in play.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is no normal. I know there's like a league average batting average on balls in play.
That's not a thing, yeah.
But so much is dependent upon what kind of hitter you are. If you hit a ton of fly balls, if you're fast and you hit the ball on the ground, you have to look at it from different perspectives for sure.
Well, if you're going to look at BABIP, just compare it to what the player has done in the past, and how it relates to his actual, baseball card stat production. That's the way to look at BABIP, I think. Yeah, right. League average BABIP is a weird way to. I guess it's another data point, but
right.
And we accept all data points on the Circling the Bases podcast. But yeah, you got to know what you're doing when you're dealing in those kind of stats.
Sure. So I think we both had Francisco Lindor at 4.
Yep.
And kind of a weird season for him last year. Of course, he was traded to the Mets during the offseason with Carlos Carrasco. Lindor's strikeout rate has been up over the past 3 years, so I don't know if you can bank on him being a 300 hitter anymore necessarily. But, if you were going on a per game basis, 8 homers and 6 steals in 60 games last year, that's probably going to average out to 20 homers, 25 steals, something like that. He still has good patience. The barrel rate and hard hit percentage last year was right in the line with, where he was in the past. We haven't talked about it so far, like the deadened baseball or the less bouncy baseball, whatever the case may be. Maybe that does affect someone like a Lindor, we'll see. But him going to the Mets, which I think is a really good lineup, I think it should help him plenty. I think he'll score plenty of runs, and he'll contribute in power and speed departments. So, where he's going right now, which is I think it's probably where he was last year, generally 16.79 ADP right now. So that's second rounder. I mean, I think that's a perfect spot for him.
He was going earlier than that last year. I mean, he was like the 5th overall pick, if I'm recalling correctly.
But I'm thinking of when he hurt himself in spring training 2 years ago. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's dropping too far. Yeah, he's at the top or near the middle portion of the second round in a 12-team league. I mean, that's still early, obviously. You'll have 1, maybe 2 shots at him in a snake draft. But, yeah, I mean, I think he was around the 5th overall pick in a lot of leagues last year. Yeah. And does it really make sense to dock him that much after a relatively mediocre 2 months? Like you said, the batted ball data, the advanced metrics were not that far off his career norms. He would have gotten hot at some point from a counting stat standpoint, had the season stretched on longer than 60 games. He's joining a better, deeper lineup with the Mets, like you mentioned. A little worse ballpark for homers, that's true. And he's not a huge home run distance guy. So maybe if there is this de-juiced baseball, I don't even know how to analyze that because we don't know what that's going to look like.
Yeah, and Citi Field's also one of the stadiums that has a humidor, which I don't even. How does that even work? How is this decided? Are the other teams aware of which teams are getting humidors and which ones aren't? Is this?
I don't know.
It's very confusing to me. And like, what's the justification? Like, what's the process that teams have to go through to prove that they need a humidor versus other teams?
I don't know. I don't know why you're asking me that question.
Just because it should impact the way that opposing teams, decide to attack their offseason potentially.
Yeah, totally. I mean, if you got, DeGrom and Syndergaard and you're trying to build a pitching staff, yeah, you would want a humidor, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I'm very curious about how that process works.
It seems like something that the league should have to approve, but I don't really know the process of it either.
Yeah.
But yeah, with Lindor, I think the arrow should be pointing up more than it is going into fantasy draft season. Turned 27 years old in November. This is like peak time for him to really explode. And of course, he's had great seasons in the past, but I think he can. The upside's like 30 homers, 30 stolen bases.
Yeah, I agree.
And he's going early enough that justifies that. Adalberto Mondesi at number 5. Where did you have him?
He's 5 for me too, but I think he's like just a total wild card, but one I'm willing to take,
Yeah. I want to say that in every draft I've done so far, and most of them have been mocks at this point, there's someone who's willing to grab him within the top 20 picks. And his average draft position on NFC right now is 23.4. It's 21 on Yahoo. The point is you really have to commit to a player who is pretty unique for that range. But I'm buying in, like maybe for the first time. Like on the turn at the top of the 3rd round, it can feel really nice to roster that speed paired with like a more category spanning power hitter and an ace. Like if those are your first 2 picks, then you get Mondesi on the turn, like to start the 3rd round. That's a fun way to kick off a roster build if it falls that way for you. And he's a little bit more than speed too.
Yeah.
That's obviously the reason why you target him so high, because he can lap the field in stolen bases in this era of baseball. And especially with Jonathan VR projected for, I guess, more of a utility role with the Mets. I think he was 2nd in the majors in steals last year, VR. And then beyond the 24 stolen bases last year from Mondesi, 24 steals in 59 games, he won some leagues with his bat down the stretch.
He was a monster in September after being like basically worthless for the first 35 games.
Yeah, 376 average, 1130 OPS, 6 home runs over his final 22 games.
Crazy.
16 of his 24 steals came in that 22-game finish to the season. So, I don't know, we're dealing in small sample sizes. So, like, let's deal in small sample sizes. What if he can get close to being that kind of guy? And I don't think he is that guy, but it at least vaulted him up to the number 2 spot in the Royals lineup. Like right when he got hot, Mike Matheny put him at number 2, and it really worked. And I think that's a lineup we kind of like going into 2021. It's deeper than the casual fan might assume. So I bet Matheny keeps him at number 2, at least to begin the year. And kind of theoretically, like power is so prevalent on the fantasy draft board. You can get it late. Mondesi is a league winner in one category, stolen bases, and I don't think he should be a complete waste in others. So I've never had a share of him. I think he's always gone a little bit too early for my liking, but as we've done this like prep for this podcast and for our draft guide, I've started to buy in because he gives you something unique, and I think he can be a better hitter than he has been.
I think there's a stigma against him because the plate discipline isn't very good. And I think maybe we're so accustomed to looking at like the sabermetric side of stuff and like their patience and on-base ability that almost in like the fantasy world, there is a stigma against him. And there really shouldn't be. You just need to look at the 5 categories that you're playing with here. And the speed, kind of like I was saying with Trey Turner, it gives him such a safe floor to deliver something close to the value you drafted him at. You may not get, early 3rd round value out of Mondesi. He could flop a little bit, but you're still going to bank those steals, which is going to be nice. And like you said, I mean, he is going to contribute in other ways. We just have to hope it's more like the September version, or maybe the middle ground between the September version and the August version.
Yeah, you'll take that for sure.
Yeah, no doubt.
If he can be like a mid 700 OPS and approaching 800 OPS with, like a 275 average, you'll take it with all the stolen bases and the runs scored.
Yeah,
I'm buying in.
So we differ a little bit in this middle portion. So I have Xander Bogaerts 6, Bo Bichette 7, and Corey Seager 8, and I think we're kind of like flip flopped basically.
Yeah, we are. I'll talk about Bichette. I'm kind of ignoring the knee sprain that cost him about half of the already shortened 2020 season because he did make a successful return in September. I don't think that's going to be a lingering thing. And so we've seen him play 75 major league games at this point, and the returns have been pretty darn good. 307 average, 896 OPS, 16 home runs, 8 stolen bases. We said this last year when we were doing these, and we could say it again this year. He should run more than he has.
Yeah.
And he was on a better pace for steals last season than he was in his rookie year. Just didn't have enough time with the injury and the shortened schedule to post a big number there.
Yeah, he got off to a great start. He was hitting 361 with 5 homers and 13 RBIs before getting hurt. So he was on his way to being maybe a top 5 shortstop. Like he could have broken through.
Yeah.
So I think there could be a buying opportunity here.
Yeah, had a 32 stolen base season in the minors in 2018. Stole 20 bases in 106 games between the minors and majors in 2019. I think he should reach 20 steals, no problem, if he gets in a full season. I think 25 is within reach, plus the batting average and the power and the lineup around him. And then I guess we got to talk about where the Blue Jays are playing.
That's right.
They're going to start in Florida. That's confirmed. At a hitter-friendly ballpark, they're parking Dunedin, Florida. I finally pronounced it right.
You did. Nailed it.
Yeah, and then I guess they're going to move to Buffalo when the weather gets too hot in Florida. So probably late May or early June, they're going to move to Buffalo, and then they're hoping the next move after that will be Toronto. But so Dunedin's very hitter-friendly. Buffalo was pretty hitter friendly last year, and then Rogers Center's pretty hitter friendly too. So I think they're going to be in a good spot.
Yeah,
wherever they go.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and with the lineup getting deeper, where they kind of have more spots or fewer spots than quality players available for their lineup. I'm really all in on Bichette this year potentially. 11 homers and a 930 OPS over 46 games as a rookie. The batted ball metrics are solid. Like you said, the speed's good. So I think he has all the ingredients to be, a top 5 fantasy shortstop. Like I was saying, he just hasn't done it yet. So that's why I pushed him down a little bit lower, but that's really not any disrespect because shortstop's so good.
Yeah. 70. Yeah, exactly. I agree with that. 75 games is not much to go off. If we're going to nitpick Fernando Tatis, we got to nitpick Bichette a bit. But yeah, I mean, all these guys are top 45 picks, and even the next 2 names we're going to mention are top 45 picks.
So before we continue with that, just a quick note that if you want to get our online draft guide or really any of the premium products here at NBC Sports Edge, here's a special offer. You can use a promo code BASES10 for this podcast, BASES10, for 10% off any premium subscription to NBC Sports Edge Plus. Can be either monthly or annual or for any tier. Not only do you get access to the draft guide, our baseball draft guide, but you'll also get season tools for NBA and NHL, which are in season right now. So it's a great value and can help you if you just play baseball or if you have your hand in all sports. So remember, it's promo code BASES10, and you can go to NBCSportsEdge.com/MLB draft guide to get started.
So I had Corey Seager, number 7. You had him 8?
Yes.
I think he might finally get his due this year. His average draft position was around 113 this time last year. The 14th shortstop eligible player off the board. This year his ADP is 41 on Yahoo, 35.3 right now on NFC. Well, that's quite a rise after a 2-month season, but to me it seems justifiable, or at least pretty close to justifiable, because he has flashed this kind of potential, in the early part of his career, and he did it for 3 months last year. Like if you factor in the Dodgers World Series run as opposed to 2 months, like some other 2020 breakout stars. In the regular season, batted 307 with a 943 OPS, 15 homers, 41 RBIs in 52 games. You stretch that out to 162 games, that's 47 home runs and 128 RBIs.
Wow.
And then he also won the MVP in both the NLCS and the World Series, and he was great in the NLDS against the Padres too. Or did they play the Padres in that? Yeah. But total sample size was 312 plate appearances, so pretty much half a season. And his StatCast player card is incredible, which
Yeah, it's crazy.
it's dangerous to look at that after a 60-game season, but 98th percentile in hard hit percentage and expected on base percentage, 98th percentile. And I think XWOBA is probably one of the best metrics out there. 98th percentile, 95th percentile in barrel percentage, 97th percentile in exit velocity, 99th percentile in expected slugging percentage. I mean, what's not to like here? I guess he doesn't give you enough speed, but
yeah,
I mean, he is an incredibly talented hitter.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the speed is the only thing that back in the early part of his career, I think that's kind of what we were saying. Like, that's the thing that separated him from the elite shortstops. And that's probably still the case now. But, looking at the XBA last year, it was at 330. So you could actually say maybe he underperformed with his batting average, which is pretty rare to say, especially with someone who hit 307. So, and like you said, he had the larger sample of the postseason, which, basically backed up what he did during the regular season. So I'm more likely to trust that small sample, another year removed from Tommy John surgery and the hip surgery too, where he kind of fell off the map in the eyes of many fantasy players going into last year. I guess sort of justifiably, but obviously he's feeling a lot better now. He's in a great lineup and situation there with the Dodgers, which should only help him. So I think where he is, makes sense. I only put him behind Bogarts and Bichette because he doesn't really offer anything on the speed front. And, Bogarts, who I have at number 6, he's not overly flashy, I guess you'd say, but he's just steady. 289 career hitter, hit 33 homers, had 117 RBIs in 2019, and was just kind of back at a similar pace last year. 11 homers, 28 RBIs, 36 runs scored, even stole 8 bases, which was nice to see. I think that's going to fluctuate, the stolen bases, but at least the possibilities there of potentially getting to double-digit stolen bases. You like the lineup, you like the venue there, Fenway Park. I think, the ADP with him is right around 36 or so in NFC drafts. I think there's a decent shot that he outdoes that ADP, but I think given his history and what he's done in recent years, I don't think you're going to lose anything here.
Yeah, Bogarts is interesting because the ADP is pretty high, but he's not getting a ton of buzz. You and I are on Twitter all day or reading all sorts of fantasy articles, and I feel like no one's talking about Xander Bogarts.
I think people are just down on the Red Sox.
Yeah, I think, and I agree with that. But, Fangraphs had them as a better percentage to make the playoffs than the Rays,
And the Orioles.
Yeah. But yeah.
The poor Orioles.
His metrics, Bogarts, weren't eye-popping last year. Most of it down from his breakout 2019. But, yeah, I mean, the production was there. Batted 300 with a slugging percentage over 500. And his 162-game pace of 32 homers and 24 steals, 8 for 8 in stolen bases, like you said, after stealing only 4 bases in 155 games in 2019. I don't think he's a 20-steal guy, but I think he can get to double digits with 30 homer pop and a good average and a good lineup spot. Yeah, I'm into Bogarts. I feel like the upside with a Bo Bichette is a little higher, but maybe that's just because I'm overlooking Bogarts I feel like a lot of people are.
I think there's maybe some more safety with Bogarts, but
yeah.
I like Bichette too. And again, these 3 guys are pretty bunched together as far as ADP anyway. So, I think people are going to be splitting hairs wherever they feel, going into draft. Some people want to play it safe. Somebody wants a breakout. So, that's what you're going to run into over the course of your draft.
Yeah. I had Tim Anderson at number 9. I think, who'd you have at 9? Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, I think we were all ready for some Tim Anderson regression last year, or at least I was, but he either repeated or improved in areas from what he did in 2020, which built off a really good power and speed year from 2018 that just didn't have the great rate stats and metrics. But he got those rate stats, batting average, especially in 2019, and continued it last year. So he's taken these overall strides in slash line combined with the homers and stolen bases. And it almost feels wrong putting him ninth. I'd say it's easier to poke some holes with Anderson than the top 8 for me at shortstop, who, again, are all top 45 picks. And Anderson is too. So, like, the top 9 shortstops are all top 45 picks. Anderson had a .399 batting average on balls in play in 2019, which signals some luck, in a .383 BABIP in 2020. But we talked about this. He's fast, 91st percentile sprint speed. So that obviously helps the batting average and is a factor. And thinking he might try to steal more bases under Tony La Russa, who's always been cool with people running. That would be nice. There's also, the point that his batted ball metrics and hard hit rates are they're not great. So I'm a big fan of the player. I feel a little safer with some other options at the position. I'm kind of conflicted on Tim Anderson. I doubt I'm going to draft him because I'm not a total believer that he's a 330 hitter, which I think we would both agree with. But I think there's more speed here than he's shown. And I think the power is probably what it's been the last 2 years. I don't know. What's your take on Tim Anderson?
It's really 395 BABIP over the past 2 seasons, which consists of 172 games. That's just really hard to do, to bank on that for another season, like basically impossible, even though he is fast. I don't really buy that continuing. So, the batting average will probably fall, but, 331 is what he's hit over the last 2 seasons. So even if it falls a bit, I still think he's going to be useful there. He's really aggressive. Swings a lot, not going to take a ton of pitches, just 10 walks in 49 games last year, just 15 in 123 games. But we just said with Mondesi, sometimes you use that against players when you really shouldn't. I do wonder about Anderson. You were pointing out the batted ball metrics, the power metrics. You wonder a little bit with a player like Tim Anderson, is that going to impact his power if the ball isn't as hitter friendly as it's been over the past couple of years? I could certainly see that happening. One thing, though, about Anderson, his barrel rate was up quite a bit last year. He had 16 of them and 159 batted balls last year. He only had 20 and 391 batted balls in his breakout season in 2019. So I guess that's kind of encouraging if you want to believe. But no doubt it's tricky. But I think the lineup helps. The speed helps, especially if he stays near the top of the volume. I think he'll be fine, but there's a lot of questions here about this profile.
I had Gleyber Torres 10th. Who'd you have 10th?
Same.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It might seem like putting him 10th is putting too much stock into the short year numbers, but I'm actually not as down on him as that ranking might suggest, sort of like Tim Anderson. He just could not get it going last year. And, Brian Cashman made those comments in, I think, December. I think it was during the virtual winter meetings that he didn't show up to spring training 2.0 in very good shape. It was kind of playing catch up with that through the early part of September. But he really turned it on from there, and that led into a strong postseason. 2020 was a totally different year than baseball players are used to, and some adapted to the starts and stops better than others. Torres still had some decent underlying metrics, the walk rate up, the strikeout rate down, had some bad luck with his home run to fly ball rate. Considering the individual profile mixed in with the home ballpark, Yankee Stadium, couldn't he rank as the best pure power option at the shortstop position? Like, Story probably slightly ahead if he stays in Coors Field, but if we're talking home runs, he hit 38 home runs in 144 games in 2019. He's 24 years old, doesn't turn 25 until December. I think maybe you kind of bet on the power returning in a big way here, get him at a discount, look for speed and batting average at other positions, like maybe take one of those big outfielders earlier in a draft, like in the top of the first round, and get Torres a little bit later than he probably should be going.
Yeah, that's kind of sort of my game plan, actually, because I kind of want to throw out a good portion of what we saw from Torres last year. And remember, he was banged up a bit too, especially, before September, elbow, hamstring, quad injuries. And, the numbers on the whole were pretty bad, but, He was good when he came back in September, and you said about the plate discipline being a lot better. The postseason, I think, gives you reason for optimism coming into 2021. And given the ballpark and the lineup and the early track record, and getting to face the Orioles pitching staff, which he always loves to do, I think we can look for him to bounce back nicely and be a really fine value if you miss out on some of these early names. I think maybe going into last year, I was expecting some regression with the power, but not to this extent. So even if he's like a 30 homer guy, I think you'd be fine with that.
Yeah, I mean, you can lock in 15 against the Orioles, so you're halfway there. Yeah,
Matt Harvey. I don't want to bust on King Felix because I love King Felix, and I hope he has a great swan song in Baltimore.
I saw the Orioles are going to go with a 6-man rotation. I'm like, you don't have 6.
Yeah. Oh man, it's gonna be a rough year for the Orioles, but it's gonna be by design. I don't think they mind at all. So
yeah, no, they'd love to get the number 1 pick.
Yeah.
Javier Baez, 11. Do we not talk about last season here?
He's one of those players I think we might have talked about previous episodes, like lack of in-game video. Baez is someone who, was affected by that. And you can kind of understand why. Look at the strikeout rate last year, 31.9%. That's the highest it's been since his rookie year when he struck out like almost every time he came up. But it was at 27.8% in 2019, so like 4 percentage points lower in 2019, 25.9% in 2018. The walk rate fell to a career low. It was kind of just a perfect storm. So I'm kind of buying the idea of, the video access really, impacting him. He seems like the kind of player that might need those in-game adjustments. So, to me, it makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, he was bad. And I didn't see any injury stuff either. I really looked into it. Like maybe there was some inkling that he was hurt. Maybe that thumb fracture that he suffered in late 2019. Remember, he tried to return from it for the final weekend of the season, and it just did not go well. But he got 7 months before the 2020 season got underway. So I can't imagine that was a factor. I've said this before about Baez on this podcast, that his 2018 is going to be a career outlier.
Yeah.
But at least you're not having to go into the top 25 for him like you had to last spring and the spring before. The ADP is actually closer to 75. So from a value standpoint, there is the power and the speed upside, and I could see some appeal. There's the walk-year narrative too. I'm kind of doubting we see an extension, given the other moves the Cubs have made and the way they're crying poor. So he has 9-figure reasons to want to mash this year.
Right. Yeah, and I think we both have Carlos Correa at 12.
Yeah.
Which, how much of that is reputation? Because I was really tempted to go in another direction here.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. He has the walk-year narrative too, like Baez, but I think there actually might be an extension there in Houston. I think they could kind of get him at a low point. His year-over-year numbers don't make a whole lot of sense, even acknowledging the injuries. But his batted ball data is at least fairly similar throughout all of that, and that makes me think the upside, like you're talking about, is somewhat limited. His fullest season of games, his healthiest season, which was 2016, he had 20 home runs and 660 plate appearances. The career batting average is 276. He doesn't steal bases anymore at age 26.
Right.
So if he puts it all together, I still don't think he'd be a top 8 shortstop.
I think that's fair. Just 6 stolen bases in 352 games since the start of the 2017 season. The postseason last year, though, he was awesome. He looked like that stud player he was, supposed to be. 6 homers, 17 RBIs over 13 games, sort of like Jose Altuve. There were some high-profile guys on the Astros last year who struggled during the regular season. There were all sorts of theories about that, but Altuve and Correa both turned it on. When it mattered the most, and maybe that makes you feel a little bit better going into this year.
I don't think he's a bad player. The shortstop position's so loaded. It's he's 12 and could maybe be lower, but I feel like there's a drop off after Baez, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. And the ADP, I might not have like the most updated one from NFC, but like the last time I checked, it was 127 in that area. That's pretty late for Correa. So like, yeah, I mean, I think once Baez goes off the board, like you might as well wait for on a shortstop if you haven't gotten anybody at that point. You don't really have to start to reach for these guys because there's quite a few who fall in this same area.
Yeah, I had Dansby Swanson 13.
Yeah, me too.
I like him quite a bit in real life, and I would certainly listen if someone were preaching about how there's more fantasy upside here than maybe I'm seeing.
The Braves won't say that though. They beat him in arbitration. They apparently think that last year was the peak for him.
I mean, he was pretty good last year.
Yeah,
maybe his best year in terms of pace for home runs and stolen bases, but only 55th percentile in exit velocity, 58th percentile in hard hit percentage. That's kind of what he's been too. So it seems like his ceiling for homers is probably 25 and could maybe get to something like 15 steals if everything breaks right and his health cooperates. He's had some health issues. And then he's also probably batting 6th or 7th in that lineup.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
Yeah,
I mean, if he's not if he's like not hitting second, then I think that dings him a little bit.
Yeah, I think it does big time. So I like him, and I'm like, I'm willing to hear someone talk me into him, but I don't really think there's anyone willing to do that. Yeah. Who else do you have in this range?
Tommy Edman,
Yeah.
Marcus Semien, they're back to back for me, 14th and 15th, and their ADPs are fairly close. We talked about Edman a little bit in our second base episode. It does seem like the path is clear for him as far as playing time, and he was someone we liked a lot going into last year. It didn't really work out, but I think the sample was small enough that we should be willing to forgive that. Maybe he's just like a utility player in the end. You might have a better, insight on that, but with the speed that he has, which is really good, I'd be willing to forgive him.
Well, declining Colton Wong's option, I think that was a signal that second base is Edmonds. It's Edmonds to take over, and I think the leadoff spot probably is too. I saw that Nolan Gorman, their top third base prospect, is working with Jose Oquendo this spring to try to take over second base, but that would probably be 2022, 2023.
Right.
And yeah, with what Edmonds showed his rookie year, he's probably some combination of that and what we saw in 2020. But I think he's a sneaky bounce back candidate with, close to 20 homers, maybe like 15 steals as a leadoff man for the Cardinals ahead of Goldschmidt, Arenado, Carlson, DeYoung. I kind of like him. If you got a middle infield spot, like if you're playing in a deeper league, it'd be fun to have him there. I would say the same for Marcus Semien. Like I wouldn't want him necessarily as my starting shortstop or second baseman whenever he gets that eligibility, but having him in a middle infield spot, I'd feel pretty good about.
Yeah, Semien had a weird year last year. The strikeout rate shot up like 8% compared to 2019. The exit velo, hard hit rate, barrel percentage were all down. His XBA was 204. It just was a weird year, and sort of willing to chalk that up to maybe just statistical noise. I didn't think it was going to be quite as good as his 2019 season, going into last year. The ADP was way too high for my comfort level. But where he is now, my last check on NFC was 142 in that range. I mean, that's fine if you're looking at him as a middle infielder. And like you said, a couple weeks into the season, he's going to get that second base eligibility as well. So that's really handy to have, shortstop second base eligibility.
Yeah, with Semien, other than that 892 OPS in 2019 when he finished third in the AL MVP voting, his OPS has either been in the 600s or 700s. Mm-hmm. So is there enough evidence there that he could be that kind of player again? But he does have pretty good power and a bit of speed, and playing it at TD Ballpark in Dunedin, Florida, and then Buffalo, I think that gives him a boost. And just being in that lineup in general. I had Didi Gregorius kind of in this range too. He was quietly very good for the Phillies last year, and they re-signed him to a 2-year, $28 million contract late in the offseason. Also had interest from the Reds, and it would have been fun to see what that could do at Great American Ballpark. But I think there seems to be a nice floor of power here back in Philly. 10 homers, 40 RBIs in 60 games last year, 284 batting average, 827 OPS. That's pretty much the guy he was during his best seasons with the Yankees, and I think he'll carry it over. Age 31 season. I feel pretty good about him as, a guy you can also put in a middle infield spot if you're lacking in some power.
Yeah, Gregorius was 16th for me right after Semien, so I'm right there with you. Looking at some of these deeper options, Paul DeYoung, I think you mentioned before, gets a decent boost with the Arenado trade, I think. ADP on NFC last time I checked, 220 in that range. Just 3 homers last year. But remember, he hit 30 homers in 2019, so I think he could be a really nice power value late.
Yeah, he was also a COVID case. He tested positive, and we've seen that affects people fatigue-wise and stuff. And yeah, I think he could be a 30. He was a 30 homer guy in 2019. That not that long ago. So that's some late round power at the shortstop position. Haesung Kim. I guess this is our chance to talk about him because he did play shortstop in Korea. He probably won't play shortstop in front of Fernando Tatis in San Diego, but man, looking back, I wish he landed somewhere other than the Padres.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I think they're going to mix and match guys with, Cronenworth in that mix, Jerks and Profar re-sign. It's going to be hard for him. You're not going to be banking on mixed league value from him from the start. I think that's going to be a little bit unfair to expect that.
I agree. I think it would have been great if he landed with the Blue Jays before they got Semien.
Yeah.
It's actually see him shine. I mean, 306 average, 921 OPS, 30 homers, 23 steals in Korea last year. But yeah, there might have to be an injury or two on that depth chart for him to get a shot at attempting to translate those numbers into Major League Baseball. Cronenworth and Profar kind of do exactly what he's projected to do defensively.
Yeah.
So yeah, there needs to be a path to open up to him. Maybe this is a good chance to get your take on Jonathan VR as our resident Mets fan.
I think he's going to play a decent amount. The Mets have been very reluctant to say, JD Davis, you're our starting third baseman.
Yep.
After what happened last year, he's also not a great defensive third baseman. He has a good arm, but not a great defender at third base, not a left fielder either. So I think we could see a situation where JD Davis is on the short side of a platoon at third base with maybe Jeff McNeil getting starts against right-handers at third and VR getting a lot of starts against right-handers at second base, which is a good thing for his fantasy value. So I think maybe people are ignoring him a little too much right now. I think he's going to play a fair amount. And also, he's capable of playing center field. So that's kind of an unsettled area, especially if there does turn out to be a DH in the National League. He could play more than you might think.
Yeah, we should run through some guys here real quick. Wander Franco, we have to hit on him.
Yes.
The number one overall prospect in the sport. But we're talking about a very cost-conscious Rays team. How are they going to handle his service time? And I guess you have to look at the fact that he hasn't played a game above high A ball yet. I wouldn't be patient enough with a bench reserve spot in a standard league to wait that all out. Extremely bright future, though. 336 batting average, 928 OPS through his first 175 minor league games, 20 home runs, 22 steals. He's going to be a stud. In a standard league, I don't think this is the year where you really commit. I think you just try to win the waiver claim on him whenever that comes up, or pick him up a week before he comes up.
Sure. I mean, I think maybe we'll see him at some point this year. Remember the Rays had him travel to their postseason. Was it for the World Series or the ALCS or something like that? I think it was the World Series. They had him travel with the team, and people were speculating, is he going to be part of the postseason roster? And there was even a picture of him, maybe he put on his Instagram of a jersey or something. But that didn't end up happening. But I think there's a decent chance we see him this year, especially I feel like I've heard chatter about maybe Willy Adames being a trade candidate.
Definitely. He's almost to arbitration. Of course he's a trade candidate.
And they have Vidal Brujan coming up too. Something's going to change there fairly soon, but we know the Rays are pretty good at mixing and matching guys. Adames is, somewhat interesting, 8 homers in 54 games last year, but I just noticed his strikeout rate last year was 36.1%. So that's not what you want to see, but he's someone in a deeper mixed league could be a middle infielder option as well.
Elvis Andrews, A's manager Bob Melvin, said on the first day of camp that Andrews is a candidate to bat leadoff, which would be big, setting the table for a fairly dynamic lineup. He missed a chunk of time last year with a lower back strain, and the numbers weren't good when he was healthy. But I'm sure he was dealing with that back injury before he went on the injured list. 12 homers, 31 steals in 2019. I think he could steal 25 bases at age 32. I think he's still got that kind of speed with a lot of runs scored if he's hitting leadoff, and he's basically like free on draft boards. So I think he's worth keeping in mind. Jorge Polanco, I don't know, probably worth a dart throw. Really good in 2019, not so good in 2020. And I think the playing time looks iffy with Andrelton Simmons now wearing a Twins uniform. Yeah. Maybe Polanco probably mixes in at second base in like a sort of platoon with Luis Arias. Mm-hmm. Does he take over third base when the inevitable Josh Donaldson injury happens? For now, I just don't like the playing time situation, but I feel like in general, the Twins are kind of down on him too.
It seems maybe. Yeah. David Fletcher, I love him in real baseball, but not really so much in fantasy. Nick Ahmed, I think, is like a little underrated in fantasy. He can do a little bit of everything and be useful late. Mauricio Dubon with the Giants. It looks like he's going to play center field primarily, but he's eligible in a bunch of positions, and he can do a little bit of everything as well. One name we loved going into last year, at least I did. I think I drafted him in multiple leagues, which maybe tells the tale of why my year went so poorly. Kevin Newman with the Pirates. He was terrible last year, but going into last year, he was someone who gives you a little bit of speed, decent average at the top of the Pirates lineup. If he can hold off Cole Tucker for the starting shortstop job, like he could be a great value, and you can basically get him for free.
The Brewers situation, Orlando Arcia, Luis Urias, both, fairly prominent prospects at certain points in their career, just have not gotten it going offensively. I wouldn't draft them, but I would keep Urias in mind. Like, he had a hand injury last year. He's a guy that I think can get it going eventually. His minor league numbers are eye popping.
Yeah.
And then I'll wrap it up with Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, who's going to take over as the Rangers' everyday shortstop apparently after that Elvis Andrus trade to the A's. Former catcher, so this is kind of weird. But he had 8 steals during the short year. Maybe getting out from behind the plate unlocks more of the speed. I think he's still eligible at catcher on Yahoo too. So that's a sneaky.
I think I'm eligible at catcher.
Yeah. Well, did Yahoo just carry over the eligibility from last year?
It might have. I'm trying to get to the bottom of that kind of stuff. It's so confusing this year.
I know. Yep.
And hopefully we can get some more clarification on how that works. I'm really not sure. But I think that completes shortstop, right?
I think we hit on everybody. Andres Jimenez.
Jimenez, Rosario with the Indians. Like, I think there's something there. I will see where Rosario plays because, Cesar Hernandez is there too to play second base. I don't know. I wouldn't completely quit on Rosario. He's shown enough in the past to be worth a flyer, and his ADP is like, free as well. So
yeah,
I would give him maybe a second chance, if you're looking for a middle infielder late. So that wraps up shortstop. I think we've gone as deep as we can possibly go, at least within the space of an hour. So stay tuned on Monday for our next episode, which will be a breakdown on the third base position for the 2021 season. If you like what you're hearing with this show, Circling the Bases, be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please rate and review if you don't mind. Follow us on Twitter if you don't already. I'm at DJ Short. Drew is at Drew Silva. Be safe out there, and we will see you next time.